Especially in India, in around 10th class, you are supposed to make this choice between whether I like biology or whether I like math. Or I don't like math, so I will do biology, or I don't like biology, so I will do math. But I don't think biology is taught in a very nice way in schools. It's very important for those who have a background in engineering or quantitative sciences to start looking at biology. Ultimately, you're going to cast these biological problems as a matrix or a graph or a network, and you're going to run several algorithms on that and make inferences. In my courses or my lab, this is something I always tell my students. The only prerequisite is an interest in biology. You don't need to know biology. You need to not dislike biology. I still believe in doing more traditional degrees, and I think very quickly data science is becoming one of the traditional degrees.
Hello everyone, today we are here in Wadhwani School of Data Science and AI. We are here to meet Professor Karthik Raman, who is a professor of Wadhwani School of Data Science and AI. He also teaches a BSc level course called Big Data and Biological Networks. He also coordinates the Center of Integrated Biology and Systems Medicine. And along with that, he has also authored a book called Computational Systems Biology. So we are going to interview him today and gain valuable insights from his experiences. Sir, I notice you have a lot of awards. So what are some of your remarkable achievements that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, so I have this award on the Institute Research and Development Award from the Institute of IIT Madras, which I think is very precious, because when the institute recognizes the work that you're doing, it's great. So it's basically an assessment of your research program and so on. I also have the Young Faculty Recognition Award from the institute, which is solely based on teaching. So that is also a very coveted award, because it's wonderful to see your teaching efforts being recognized by the institute.
Well, not only that, you have also authored a book. So can you tell us some more about your book?
Yeah, so I think that's right here. So this is the book. It's an introduction to computational systems biology, with a really nice cover designed by one of our students, which looks at a cell and then starts looking at the networks within a cell. So the book basically starts off talking about various kinds of networks, and focusing then on biological networks, their applications, and a lot of how mathematical techniques like ordinary differential equations, how they can be used to build dynamic models, and then how there is a complete field of constraint based modeling, which is very useful to understand how metabolism happens within cells, and how you can reroute this metabolism, much like you reroute traffic within a city, towards producing a product that's of commercial interest and so on. And ultimately looking at how microbes interact with each other, the kind of research that my lab heavily works on and so on. And so these are some of the things that are covered in the book, and it's like it's a very simplified introduction, not very heavy on the math side, just so that people from even like an MSc course or so can really dig into it and understand a little bit more about how mathematical modeling can be applied in biology.
Apart from being an author of a book, you have also published a lot of papers. So what are some of the most interesting publications you have done?
Yeah. So we really like to think of ourselves as folks developing computational algorithms and methods to work on biological systems. So we've developed a lot of algorithms over the years, and which study various aspects of biological systems. One of our older algorithms and one of my favorite algorithms is something known as FastSL, which looks at how synthetic lethals can be enumerated very fast in biological networks. So synthetic lethals are basically a very mathematical concept actually. These are called as minimal cut sets in mathematics. So you remove one gene, nothing happens to the cell. You remove the other gene independently, nothing happens to the cell. But when you remove the two genes together, the cell dies. So how do you enumerate these? So this, if you have 1,000 genes, this could be a 1,000 choose 2 problem, and that's not computationally tractable, especially in a biological network. Or if you're looking at 1,000 choose 3, that's like several hundred million. So these are very difficult to enumerate computationally, and we had a very efficient algorithm to do that. And we also very recently, we had in 2018 we published this algorithm called MetQuest, which looks at trying to identify pathways in metabolic networks, in large metabolic networks, including in metabolic networks that span across cells. So this is very useful to study how what kind of metabolites can be exchanged between microbes in different environments, and this formed the seed for a lot of studies that we've been doing in all those exciting environments or metasub and things like that that we've been doing. And we more recently had an algorithm to leverage what is known as 16S data. So this is like a relatively cheap sequencing technology for understanding microbial communities, but it's not very high resolution. But can you still build models at that low resolution and understand a lot more and so on? So this is something that this is called Panada, and this was one of our recent publications.
So, sir, what are biological networks and how are biological networks related to big data?
So if you see in about 2000, the first human genome was sequenced, and at that point of time, there was a lot of interest in trying to understand. The idea was that once we sequence the human genome, we would understand a lot about human diseases, and then we'll be able to solve all the human disease problems very quickly and so on. But it turns out that that was just the starting. And what the Human Genome Project led us to understand is that there are like so many components which are wired in a very complex fashion in every biological cell. There are like proteins, metabolites, and so on that interact with each other in a very, very complex network. And this network is what ultimately results in biological function. And if you really want to start understanding disease, you have to start thinking of it as like network dysfunction. So you really need to understand the underlying biological networks in every cell if you want to better understand human disease or any biology for that matter. So the basic idea of biological networks is very similar to what you see in other systems, right? So you must have heard of traffic networks, social networks, and so on. Right? So all these are certain entities which have different relationships. So in a social network, you have people who are friends with other people and so on. And in a biological network, you have proteins which work together with other proteins and so on. And the interactions between these proteins are very important for us to understand and maybe target when something goes wrong. And also these interactions are very important for us to understand the etiology of various diseases and things like that. So and typically, how do you construct these networks? Going back to your question on big data. So there is a huge amount of biological data that's been coming in ever since the first genome was sequenced. So you have genomic data, metabolomic data, transcriptomic data. So all these are different omic levels. So you have DNA that becomes RNA, that becomes protein inside every living cell. And how these molecules interact with each other. So they're all embedded in real vast complex networks. And these networks are actually inferred from these big data sets. So this is why we talk about big data, biological big data, and this is like truly big data, right? In terms of like a single genome will already run into several hundred GB of data and so on. And you have like several genomes, and then you have what is known as metagenomes, where you have multiple organisms, you have their genomes and so on. So this becomes like extremely complex and requires a lot of data analysis to sift through this and come down to the underlying biological networks.
So the whole curriculum of BS degree in data science, is it enough for someone who is interested in the field of biological networks?
Definitely. So I always like to talk about this, right? So especially in India, in around 10th class, you are supposed to make this choice between whether I like biology or whether I like math, or I like math, I don't like math, so I will do biology, or I don't like biology, so I will do math. But in reality, of course, I think this is maybe time for another discussion, but this is maybe topic for another discussion, but I don't think biology is taught in a very nice way in schools, right? I don't think the quantitative aspects of biology are really brought out in schools. It's mostly taught as like a rote learning, drawing kind of subject where you have to draw like very intricate diagrams and you have to rote learn taxonomy and things like that. But if you really start looking at biology closely, it's fairly quantitative. There's obviously there are more exceptions than rules in biology. That's definitely a thing. But you will see that biology is a highly quantitative science, and the genomic revolution has clearly underscored that. And you see that it's very important for someone to have a quantitative mindset to analyze these biological data sets and so on. So I think it's very important for those who have a background in engineering or quantitative sciences to start looking at biology. And this is why we have a Center for Integrative Biology and Systems Medicine as well, wherein the whole idea was to leverage the smartness of IIT undergrads and PhD students in the quantitative sciences to make them work on biological data sets. So, and if you go back to the BS curriculum, I really don't think you need you need so much biology. In fact, we very quickly cover biology in that one elective course on big data and biological networks. Professor Himanshu has a few very nice introductory lectures wherein he covers all the basic biology that is needed, because ultimately you're going to cast these biological problems as, you know, a matrix or a graph or a network, and you're going to run several algorithms on that and make inferences. But of course, you need to be able to appreciate what are the nodes or what are the edges in those networks and so on. And for instance, in my courses or my lab, this is something I always tell my students: the only prerequisite is an interest in biology. You don't need to know biology. You need to not dislike biology, or I think that's okay too, right? I think most of us, including myself, we did dislike biology in our younger years. And it's really easy to get over that and start appreciating biology for, in fact, how quantitative it is.
Well, I can attest to this because during 9th grade and 10th grade, I hated drawing diagrams, and this was the fact that I took PCM in 11th and 12th. But now I've been reading news and a lot of AI articles, and I have kind of gained interest in the biology field. And so through this data science, I also want to, and some of my friends also want to go in the field of data science and medicine and data science and biology. So what do you think are the career prospects or prospects of higher education for someone like me who has taken PCM?
Oh, definitely, right? So I still believe in doing more traditional degrees, and I think very quickly data science is becoming one of the traditional degrees, because at least the math that you learn is pretty traditional, right? It's very engineering oriented, but not even the computer science kind of discrete math. So it's, in that sense, it's a traditional degree, but on top of that, I think you can really specialize with certain electives and certain other courses. You can really equip yourself to work with biological data. I think time and again we've seen, so we also have a very nice undergrad sort of a dual degree program in data science, right? So we have this interdisciplinary dual degree program in data science at the Wadhwani school. And what we've seen there is that we have students from a mechanical engineering background who've been working on predicting preeclampsia in women using data collected from a pregnancy cohort. So I think we've time and again have had students who come from very different backgrounds but are able to quickly appreciate biology and start working with these data sets. And I think it's very exciting to work on biological data sets simply because a lot of us want to understand life and disease and so on better. We are very curious about how things work, and we always, you know, we would have known a relative who suffered from cancer or something like that. So we would like to understand more about this, and you definitely see social impact much faster in this domain rather than
really real.
Yes.
Compared to other fields, biological field feels really real.
Exactly. And also the thing is that biology was being done very differently till about 2000. So now that for the last 20-25 years we've changed the way we are doing biology, there is just so many computational and mathematical challenges in the field, which makes it really exciting for engineers to come and data scientists to come and work in this field.
Well, as a professor, what does a day in your life look like at IIT Madras?
Yeah, so we like to think that we do a lot of teaching and research, but of course, yes, in most of my day goes in meeting students and discussing science with them and so on. And of course, we do teach a course every semester, and there are activities related to that, like talking to the teaching assistants, making sure the assignments are graded, and making sure the assignments are posted, and so on. And we also have a lot of other administrative meetings wherein there are meetings that departmental meetings with to focus on new curricula, new programs, or meetings with collaborators and so on. So we do spend a lot, especially in a computational domain. You spend a lot of time strategizing, ideating, and also in meetings. But yes, so a lot of time goes in discussing exciting ideas with students. And Of course, from time to time it changes. We also, do some, there are boring administrative duties also that come in from time to time. But we can't begrudge those because it's a very essential part of being a faculty in a system like this. And I think what's very exciting as, in this system is that we have a lot of academic freedom, right? So we get to choose the kind of research problems we like to work on. We get to choose what kind of courses we like to teach. And the best part, of course, is interacting with the really bright minds that come here.
So what are some of the fields and some of the projects that you are really excited about?
So, so my lab heavily works on applying modeling techniques to understand how microbes interact with each other in different environments. And we've actually really worked on environments right from the deep sea to the outer space. So in the deep sea, we've looked at hydrothermal vents in the US where there are these deep sea hydrothermal vents where there are like almost like volcanoes, deep sea volcanoes, where there's like a stream of hot water that mixes with very cold water, and you have a gradient where you have like some exotic microbes that can survive because they are like extremophiles. They can survive in like high temperatures and so on. And we've studied these microbes. And on the complete other extreme, we've studied microbes in the International Space Station, where even though there is like very high radiation, very high carbon dioxide and so on, even in these extreme environments, microbes are able to survive and proliferate and so on. So how do you understand these environments? How do microbes work in these environments? And can you really figure out the network underlying the interaction of these microbes to go and see how do you disrupt this network? Because you want these places to not at least have pathogens. It's impossible to wish away microbes, so you probably want to make it like full of benign microbes or something like that, because there's no place is sterile. So this is something that's really exciting. And more recently, the most exciting project we've done is an offshoot of what was started off almost a decade ago in New York, where they sampled the New York subways for microbes, right? And to see what is the microbial signature of New York City. And we've now been able to do that for Chennai Metro. And our study is like, currently under submission, but the preprint is already available and those interested can go and read it. And this is very interesting because we see what kind of microbes are present in Chennai city and how this relates to our environment and so on. And this can potentially also, very interestingly, we found nothing alarming there. But it can definitely provide a way for the clinicians and so on to really surveil these places to understand what kind of diseases are coming up or things like that, right? Although we didn't find, we in fact did the sampling during COVID, but we didn't find enough, of the virus and things like that even during COVID. But I think these kinds of studies can really help us understand how new diseases start proliferating and things like that. So this is a very exciting study, and most recently we've also done an offshoot of that where we sampled IIT Madras, and which will really give us insights on how a region that's almost like a mini city, a microcosm of Chennai, but with a lot of very nice wildlife, how does that change the microbial signatures and so on. So this is something that's really interesting.
Well, all this sounds really exciting. So have you always been interested in biology? What sparked your interest during your student days?
So I wanted to, I started off like most people wanted to do computer science, and I was really interested in coding, programming and mathematics and so on. But for my undergrad, I went to the Institute of Chemical Technology in Mumbai, and where I did a course in chemical technology where we focused a lot on, in fact, it's my major was in food engineering, where we focused a lot. It was almost like a biotechnology course. So we studied biochemistry, microbiology, and also studied chemical reaction engineering, chemical process control, and so on. So when I studied process control, I really got fascinated and drawn towards mathematical modeling and so on. But I also thought that the systems that we look at in biology are very interesting, like how proteins are made and how proteins have exotic functions and so on. So I then started thinking that one has to try and apply these computational techniques to biology, and it did seem that it was already a pretty much well-established field even back in when I was graduating. So I thought that would be a really nice field to get into. And it so turned out that I went to IISc for my masters, and I had just the right advisor there who really excited me into working on these kinds of data and these kinds of problems.
Well, apart from your academics, what are some of the hobbies that you enjoy?
So I'm really fond of Sanskrit. So I try to pick up Sanskrit in my spare time, and I also do like some OCR of old texts, proofread them, and things like that. And also do some hobby coding, contribute to open source projects, especially in the domain of computational linguistics or Indian astronomy and things like that.
Well, have you always wanted to be a professor, or were there any other career options that you were exploring?
Yeah, so I was like, my grand uncle was a professor of computer science, and I remember as a kid, I really used to look up to him, and definitely that influenced me along the way. And yes, so this was definitely something I wanted for the longest time that I can remember. And although you really need a lot of luck and things falling into place through your career to really land up here, I would say that this is something I was definitely excited for a long time.
Well, as a student in school, were you always the studious one, the first bencher, or were you the backbencher?
That's a funny story. So I think till class 10 I was always a first bencher, and in class 11th and 12th, somehow most of us just switched to the last bench, and because we were we just used to not be in tune with what was being taught in class. We just thought that yeah, I think at that time we thought we were like, yeah, we knew more than what was being taught in school at that point of time and so on. But yes, in our we used to have very rigorous coaching classes and things like that, which was essentially an extension of school. Not like the the new coaching classes which are on. It was more of like concepts and problem solving, and used to be very sincere and studious there as well.
Well, what advice in general would you like to give to students who are currently interested in data science or in biological networks?
Yeah, so I think you should. It's everything has become too interdisciplinary right now, so it's very important to pick up multiple domains. And I don't think pure data science is great, but I think you're going to have a lot of satisfaction and fun out of solving problems in a particular domain, right? So that domain could be chemical engineering, it could be aeronautical engineering, it could be biological engineering, healthcare, and so on. So I think you need to be able to straddle these things, and the opportunities are just huge today. You have enough things you can do sitting in front of a computer, logging into YouTube and looking at a huge array of courses, even from NPTEL or the BS program and so on. You just have access to so much knowledge in just sitting on YouTube, and it's easy to pick up a lot of these things today, right? And well, with ChatGPT and all those things, or like Notebook LM and so on, you can start making very customized programs for yourself, right? So you can maybe ask ChatGPT to make worksheets for you to solve problems in a domain that you're not very comfortable with. So with these kinds of things, I think learning has become a lot more exciting today, easy, and I think there's no excuse to not become a very well-trained interdisciplinarian today.
So, well, in the Wadhwani School of Data Science, since it is a new initiative by IIT Madras, the whole Wadhwani School of Data Science, what is something that you are particularly excited about in your department?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. It's a new department, and I'm really excited about so many things. But I think the first thing that truly excited me was that we got faculty from so many different departments moving under one roof. And I think that's like really gotten us collaborating. We were already collaborating, but this is just going to take things to the next level. And all the research centers, and we are just still physically moving in, right? So we are in this brand new building, and we are still physically moving in here. And I think once the move is complete, we will see a lot more interaction between the students. I think all these cool things are done over coffee, and I think it's going to be a great thing that we're going to have students from biology, civil engineering, computer science, data science, all having coffee together. I think that's definitely one of the things. And of course, we're very excited about all the academic programs that we have on offer here, right? Because we have a completely freshly minted BTech in AI and data analytics, designed from the ground up. So that's something we're really excited about. The students have already been exposed to computational chemistry, computational physics, and we're going to be teaching them computational biology in the next semester. And this is just in their, they're in their second semester now and going to move to their third semester soon. And they're already exposed to so many interesting domains, and I hope that they'll be able to cultivate interest in these domains and apply their hardcore data science and math skills to these exciting problems.
Well, you have been a professor for so long. What is the most exciting part about your job?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer, but I think as I already alluded to before, the most exciting part of the job is the complete academic freedom that you have, right? I can just start picking a problem that's really exciting to me and figure out the resources, get the students and get going on it. We recently started off working on AI for education. We've been working on AI in healthcare. So we've been exploring various areas, and you always have access to some really bright students and some and a lot of senior entrepreneurs or senior scientists and other kind of experts whom you very easily get access to being in places like this. And I think that's really a very exciting part of being here.
Well, thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.